thought I was confused, and I'm even more confused now.
I'm confusing myself and you.
Until we got confused.
Ask for clarification.
Which sounds complicated, but it's not.
Procedurally, the simple.
The Anglican Communion has been struggling to find the right words.
C and D. Sorry, E and F.
The words that would form a covenant, a document that sets guidelines and describes what it means to be part of the Anglican Communion. That struggle continued on Friday as the 14th meeting of the Anglican Consultative Council tried to finalize a covenant that would go to individual provinces for adoption. Many of the delegates were confused by the procedure. With votes on amendments and amendments to amendments, even the leadership had a tough time explaining what happened.
On A, they had already been, C had already been foreshadowed, so it had already been told to the body.
In order to help people know what happened at the meeting and what happened to the Anglican Communion's covenant, we're going to walk you through the process. First, let us take a brief look at the covenant. The proposed covenant has 4 sections. Section 1, 2, and 3 outlined what Anglican churches should believe, what their mission should be, and their basic structures and position in the communion. Section 4, among other things, set out guidelines on how churches could sign on to the covenant and how intercommunion disputes could be handled. Given the division and chaos that exists in the communion recently, Section 4 was the one that got the most attention on Friday. The session started around 10 o'clock in the morning. The covenant was not the first on the agenda, so delegates did not start debate on it for another 2 hours.
There's been a subtle change from...
Here are the original resolutions presented to the ACC delegates. The first resolution presented, Resolution A, sought to detach Section 4 from the covenant so that more work could be done on it before it was sent out. This resolution met strong resistance. Debate on Resolution A continued for more than an hour when the chair, Bishop Patterson of New Zealand, decided it was time to take a lunch break. After lunch, a new amendment was immediately given to the delegates. However, this amendment pertained to Resolution B and not to Resolution A. Despite that, debate now turned to the merits of the amendment.
Introducing C and D.
This is where things got confusing. Some supported the new amendment.
I want to speak in favour of Resolution C.
Some tried to redirect focus on the debate on Resolution A.
I would like to propose that Resolution A be now put to a vote.
But were denied by the chairman.
It is my judgment that this is an amendment which has been properly moved and needs further debate.
However, debate on the new amendment ended once the Archbishop of Canterbury stood up to speak.
I think we should vote on A, and then move to B, and the extra material in C is moved as an amendment to B.
So with that, the delegates took their vote on Resolution A, the one that would leave Section 4 out of the covenant and send it back for more work. A few minutes later, the results came back.
Voting for the 17 members, voting against the 47.
Resolution A failed. They now turned their attention to Resolution B. It accepted the covenant as is, including Section 4, and asked the individual provinces to report to the next meeting of the ACC in 2012. The chairman decided to vote on this resolution clause by clause and started with the first one. After a little debate, delegates voted on Clause A and soon after voted on Clause B. Now came the time to vote on Clause C, at which point the chairman recognized a delegate from South Africa.
I propose the following amendment: that the present small clause C be renumbered E, that the present small clause D be renumbered F, and the 2 new clauses be inserted. A small c asks the Archbishop of Canterbury, in consultation with the Secretary General, to appoint a small working group to consider and consult with the provinces on Section 4 and its possible revision, and to report to the next meeting of the Joint Standing Committee. And D asks the JSC at that meeting to approve a final form of Section 4.
This amendment was the same amendment that started the confusion when the delegates were discussing Resolution A. Also compare the wording of the amendment with the wording of Clause B of Resolution A. They are identical. Realizing this, the chairman was about to reject the proposed amendment.
The difficulty I have is that the House has already decided not to proceed along the lines of Resolution A.
But again, The Archbishop of Canterbury stood up to speak.
It did seem to me that the voting on A may very well have been properly influenced by the fact that an alternative form of A was known to be about to be tabled. When I spoke earlier, I said that I suggested the new material C should be moved as Model B. I suspect people may have voted on A with that in view.
The chairman was now receptive to the amendment.
Thank you. You often come to our rescue, and I'm very grateful.
Aware that what the council had already rejected in Resolution A was finding its way back in, Archbishop Munir Anis pointed this out.
I see this is like bringing A again. This is my view. We already decided against A. That is bringing A again, but in a different form.
And the chairman's response to this objection?
I think that we need to... another speaker.
And now we come to the most critical vote, the vote on what would happen to the new Anglican covenant. If the amendment failed, the covenant would be sent to the provinces for adoption. If the amendment passes, it would be sent back to committee. This vote was the culmination of 3 years of work, debate, and struggle, and after 2 speakers, the chairman called for a vote. The remaining 3 votes pertained to issues of wording and were not as significant as the vote. And just as quietly as the crucial vote was taken, the crucial meeting ended.
I think the most useful thing we can do now is adjourn for afternoon tea and